Hey guys, it's me Andrew, your favorite Canadian YouTuber, And if you've been following my channel long enough, you should already know I'm a huge Splatoon fan. I've been a fan since the second game, up until the relatively recent final Splatfest of Splatoon 3. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there will be much of anything new or a new game coming out for a little while. But on the bright side, there does exist alternatives to Splatoon to fill in the gap and help satisfy that Splatoon craving in the meantime. Although there aren't a whole lot of alternatives, and most of the few aren't quite as good as Splatoon. But today, I will be talking about what I consider to be the best Splatoon alternative, aka Foamstars! I remember back when I saw the presentation where PlayStation announced they were getting their own Splatoon-like game, it definitely caught my attention and piqued my interest. Eventually, the open beta came out, I played it, and it was a lot more fun than I expected it to be. When I heard the game would be free for PS Plus members on launch day, that's when I knew it was the perfect time to renew my PS Plus subscription and jump right back into the foam-filled action. Ever since it released, I played every single season and purchased every season pass up to this point, and I don't regret it one bit. Now, before I continue talking about my experience and everything I loved about this game, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. As you may have already guessed, many people tend to scoff at this game by just bluntly calling it a blatant Splatoon ripoff, though that's kinda debatable. There is a fine line between inspiration and plagiarism, and to be honest, I'd say Foamstars arguably sorta blurs that line in a way. It definitely has a lot of noticeable similarities to Splatoon, but at the same time, it does have its own distinct feel and style, enough to feel like its own thing. One of the greatest examples being its unique and memorable character roster, which I'll talk more about later. Now, this might be a bit of a hot take, but even if it is considered a Splatoon ripoff, that's not inherently a bad thing, because sometimes the ripoff is just as good, if not better, than the original, especially if it manages to capture or replicate the same distinctly fun feel and is just as fun to play. I'd say that's definitely the case with Foamstars. Now, instead of just writing it off as a ripoff and nothing more, I prefer to look at it as a great Splatoon alternative for PlayStation owners. It wouldn't be the first time Sony did something like this. In fact, PlayStation has a history of it, because there are so many amazing Nintendo games that are pretty much inaccessible to people who only own a PlayStation console, whether it be gamers that are strictly loyal to one console brand, or just simply can't afford to buy another expensive game console. Either way, Sony has made their own Nintendo equivalent alternatives over the years, so that PlayStation owners could experience the same magic as Nintendo users, or at least have a similar enough experience. Most of Sony's attempts to replicate, or even sometimes just straight up copy Nintendo, have been pretty hit or miss over the years. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and sometimes they're kinda mixed. In this case, I'd say Foamstars very well succeeds at giving PS5 owners the same magically fun Splatoon-like experience that Nintendo Switch owners had, in the exact same fashion how Immortals Phoenix Rising was a perfect alternative to Zelda Breath of the Wild for Xbox and PlayStation owners, providing them that same open-world Zelda-like experience, or how Astrobot is considered PlayStation's answer to some of the greatest 3D Mario games like Sunshine, Galaxy, and Odyssey. I think you get the point here. Now, is Foamstars better than Splatoon? No, definitely not. Is it just as good? Almost. Just barely. It does some things just as good, and arguably a couple things slightly better, and other things not quite as well. It's no Splatoon killer by any means, but still an excellent alternative. Oh, and not to mention Foamstars was actually created by Square Enix, and it's certainly very different from all the usual stuff Square makes, like Final Fantasy and whatnot, but in a way that feels kind of refreshing. Now that I've digested all of that, what's the game itself actually like, you may ask? Well, the basic gameplay formula can be summed up as sort of like a reverse Splatoon. While in Splatoon, the turf war objective is to cover as much turf in your team's colored ink as possible, and splatting other players is optional, but in Foamstars, it's the other way around. The Smash the Star objective is to foam up the enemy team, while covering the ground in foam is optional. Just helps you get around places faster. Not gonna lie, the very first time I played a round of Smash the Star, I played it exactly how I normally play Splatoon, and I didn't realize realize until it was too late that I was actually supposed to be shooting foam at the other team players, not all over the ground like in Splatoon. I think it was when I livestreamed my first time playing the open beta. Funny enough, when I first saw the reveal trailer for Foamstars with the characters shooting foam at each other, the first image that immediately popped in my head was the Wonka-mobile from Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory just blasting foam everywhere. Anyway, there are also several different multiplayer modes, aside from Smash the Star, including Happy Bath Survival, Rubber Duck Party, Ranked Party, and Jackpot Scramble, all of which bring something new and fresh to the table. Not to mention, there's also a series of single-player story mode missions for each character, which are fairly simple but pretty fun for the most part. The story is surprisingly interesting, and it contains a lot more social interactions between Foamstars characters, so you'll get to know them better. Though, admittedly, I haven't finished all of the missions yet. Anyway, in terms of general gameplay elements, the basic movement alone feels oddly satisfying, cause after covering some ground in foam, you can ride around on it with a surfboard, which allows you to move and get to places faster, similarly to swimming through ink in squid form in Splatoon. However, I think Foamstars' foam surfing controls actually feel surprisingly smoother, more satisfying, and less restrictive than ink swimming in squid form. It's kinda hard to describe, but if you played Foamstars and felt the foam surfing controls hands-on, you'll know exactly what I mean. Now, despite popular belief, mostly from those who haven't actually played the game, not every aspect of Foamstars is just a one-for-one copy of Splatoon. It does have its fair share of different and unique game mechanics and features. One of the first you'll notice is that, unlike Splatoon, where your ink lies flat on the ground everywhere, the foam actually has some density to it, as you can actually make terrains by building up walls or mountains of foam that you can ride on and use to get to higher grounds, which is pretty cool, not gonna lie. Not to mention, when you ride on foam terrains and stop halfway up the hill, you can stop and sort of cling onto the sides or walls of foam and just hang out there. Not gonna lie, it's kinda funny. Also, another very unique feature about Foamstars gameplay is that it does have a rather unusual way of scoring or defeating opponents. While in Splatoon, you defeat other players simply by shooting them until they go splat, but in Foamstars, you defeat players by dousing them in foam until you got them trapped inside a big dense ball of foam, kinda like getting trapped in a ball of snow while rolling down a snowy mountain. Once you got them foamed up, you've gotta chill them, which means sort of drop kicking them with your surfboard. If somebody chills you, you get knocked and or shot across the stage like a cannonball until you slam into a wall. That is, unless one of your teammates happens to be nearby and they can save you by hitting you with their surfboard and breaking you free of the foam prison, which they can also do before the opposite team tries to chill you as well. Honestly, those are some pretty unique and creative game mechanics that I don't think I've ever seen before in any other game. Oh, and of course, every playable character has their own unique playstyle and variety of different foam-based attacks and weapons. Now, speaking of said characters, like I mentioned earlier, Foamstars has a variety of simple but memorable characters. Team Fortress 2's characters have proven that simplicity can work if it's done right, and I'd say that factor applies well enough to Foamstars characters as well. They're not super in-depth or have a ton of backstory and exposition like some of Overwatch's characters do, but they have just enough charm and personality traits to be both likable and memorable characters. Their designs alone are very appealing to the eye, from their bright, neon colorful, eye-catching designs to the variety and different distinct character archetypes. Basically the polar opposite of Concord's roster. Not to mention, there's a shop full of tons of different cosmetic items, emotes, and costumes you can earn and equip to make each character look even more snazzy. Now, of course, everyone has very different tastes when it comes to what kind of character you'd want to play as, and Foamstars roster has something for just about everybody. Let's meet the stars, shall we? First up is Foamstars' main poster girl, Soa, aka the one everybody simps for. Soa is a pop music sensational idol, as well as a motivational speaker for those aspiring to achieve their dreams and whatnot. Agito is a pro gamer shark boy with a ton of attitude, as well as a well-renowned esports world champion with a massive online following that puts Ninja to shame. I wonder if he's related to Gargura. I mean, he wears a shark hoodie and has pointy teeth. Coincidence? Whatever. Tonix is a passionate scientist and genius inventor filled with curiosity and the spirit of investigating everything around her. Jet Justice is the peacekeeper of Bath Vegas and a symbol of justice, and he's basically sort of a futuristic superhero, kinda like something straight out of Overwatch. Penny Gwyn is a penguin soldier who fights against global warming, as well as an advocate for penguins. Melty is a sweet, cute, and innocent ice cream girl and the CEO of her own ice cream company, which you'll hear advertised a lot in the game. The Barissador is a sophisticated, generous gentleman, as well as the coffeehouse bartender in the main lobby. I bet he makes a mean ice cap. Ravebreaker can best be summed up as like a pessimistic, party-pooping, germophobic fanboy ghostbuster. Now, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by so much flamboyance and characters in video games nowadays, or prefer something a little more masculine, Quaff Guy's got you covered. A professional pro wrestler with superstar style, Quaff Guy really knows how to steal the show. He's just as tough as he looks, but at the same time also has a bit of a sensitive side, and is apparently also a child at heart, as shown in one of the interview phone calls that play in the lobby occasionally. Those are pretty fun to listen to as well. Ramsey is an adorable, yet somewhat annoying, living stuffed animal, as well as the good counterpart or alter ego to the mission story mode's main antagonist, Dark Ramsey. Now, I think my personal favorite character is none other than Bath Vegas's director of the Foam of Fame art gallery, Chloe Noir. She has that charming, sassy, classy, fancy, elegant, glamorous, sophisticated vibe that really reminds me a lot of Twintel from ARMS, as well as Pauline from Super Mario Odyssey. And finally, Pablo Espuma, the legendary Foam Smash champion and spokesperson for the FSGP. He's also sort of a mentor who guides you from the beginning of the game. While the characters for the most part are lovable and memorable, although the voice acting is a little off at times. Sometimes their voices sound natural, and sometimes they sound kind of like the voice actors are being held at gunpoint while reading their lines. It's a little inconsistent. Honestly, I can't tell if some of the voice acting is AI, or if it's simply just a really awkward English dub, like in a lot of Japanese games in media localized in North America. When it comes to Square Enix games, Foamstars' English dub ain't exactly as good as Final Fantasy VII's. I have heard Foamstars' Japanese dub sounds a lot better, though I doubt that's much of a surprise. Anyway, on another note, it is most definitely worth noting that the game's soundtrack is pretty dang good too. I've heard some people describe it as like if Splatoon and Persona's music had a baby, and honestly, I think that's a pretty good way to sum it up. I highly recommend listening to the game's soundtrack even when you have the time. You know what? I think I've rambled on long enough on why I love this game. Basic point, I highly recommend checking it out. In fact, fairly recently, Foamstars just became free to play for all PlayStation 4 and 5 owners, with no PS Plus subscription required. And as a legacy Foamstars veteran who's been with this game since the very beginning, I couldn't be more happy to see so many new players join the foam-filled fun, and I hope to see many more join in the future. I have no idea if this game will be coming to Xbox or PC in the future, or if it'll remain a PlayStation exclusive. Guess we'll just have to see what the future holds. For the time being, let's just relax, enjoy the game, and let the good times roll!